Okay, good evening, everybody. We'll maybe get it going. It is Monday, August 22nd, on Sound City Council. It's 7 o'clock. We're getting started on time. We did not have any closed session earlier tonight. We're starting right now. For anyone that wants to follow along on their iPad at home in the agenda, look for www.onsound.ca, and the agenda box is down on the left-hand side of the page. We don't have to have a resolution moving into closed session. We're starting really right at number 3, aren't we? Additional items. Anyone have any additional items? Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have some comments to make about AMO and a couple of fundraisers that are coming up in the next couple of weeks here in town.
Thank you. Anyone else going in that direction? No, this direction? Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few notes on one of the workshops I attended at AMO.
Okay. And others? Councillor Lemon.
Your Worship, I have something on invasive species.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary. Deputy Mayor Wright. Anyone? Okay. I'll have some comments on some of the events of the last couple of weeks since we've been here last as well. Staff, I forgot to ask you first. No? This is going to be a really quick meeting, I can just tell.
Bad words.
Disclosure, pecuniary interest, and the general nature thereof. Anyone? Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes from August 8th, 2016.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on August 8th, 2016, as printed, be adopted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Number 6 is a resolution.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that City Council now go into the Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
And all in favor? That is carried. So now in Committee of the Whole, we have no public meetings, no deputations, public question period. Not seeing anyone running to the microphone. We're down to number 10 already. I'm telling you, it's going quickly tonight. So number 10A is correspondence received from the county, Randy Schertzer, with regard to the Niagara Escarpment Plan proposed changes. And I do note that we have a report that is, I think, at number 11, if we want to bring that forward and deal with it all at the same time. Councillor McManaman.
That's fine. I was just going to move we receive this and deal with it when we get to the report, but whatever
Okay.
you're...
No, fair enough.
Is that
okay.
acceptable? All right, motion to receive then.
Okay. Councillor Kepke?
Just a question. In this particular item, I don't know if others received a draft motion or not, but I couldn't open anything that was attached. So in this particular item, there's a little box that says Grey County at the bottom, but it doesn't open. Okay.
Yeah, further down the page, I thought, yes. There's
All right.
Whereases and...
But there's a couple of items on about this on the agenda. Is that not correct?
At, yeah, that number 11 report, it comes back up, so.
Thanks.
Councillor McManaman's motion to receive this, all in favor? Oh, wait a minute, we've got a question first.
The only thing, if we don't deal with this now, then we have to go back and find the motion again if we want to put that motion in, and it, well, it doesn't matter. I guess it's just as easy.
My thought was if we wanted to adopt this exact motion, we could still do that. We're just receiving this correspondence.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay.
That's fine.
Let's call the question, all in favor?
Yeah.
That is carried. Next one is correspondence from the Mayor of Oshawa with request for a letter from the Mayor to support the continued production of GM Autoplex in Oshawa. Councillor Dodd?
I guess my only real question on this one, sorry, thank you, Your Worship. My only real question, for us, impacting us up here in Owen Sound, does Monroe manufacture shocks for GM or struts?
I don't know. Mr. Ritchie?
If I could, Your Worship, I contacted the Tenneco facility in town. Their acting plant manager really couldn't give me much information. He did give me the number of their corporate office. I have not been able to contact them, so direct impact on Owen Sound, I can't tell you. I know this is a nationwide request for support generally of the auto industry, specifically in Oshawa. Perhaps if council wishes, you might defer this and I could get a hold of Tenneco's head office to see what the impact may be on Owen Sound. As of today at 3:30, I couldn't get a hold of him.
Councillor McManaman?
Just as I was reading it, it was very unclear, because it talked about jobs in Waterloo, Kapuskasing, Markham, and then the mayor's letter, he's the mayor of Oshawa, of course, talks about the importance of keeping jobs in Oshawa and area. And I'm not sure whether he was saying he was that therefore opposed to moving them to Kapuskasing or Kitchener and Markham. It was a little unclear to me what he was. Was he opposed? If his letter is saying he's opposed to moving jobs out of Ontario, I certainly support that. If his letter is saying he's opposed to moving it from Oshawa to Kitchener,
So
I'm not sure that's.
Should we set it aside for a meeting and try and get more information? Or, you know, clearly the auto industry is huge in Ontario and it affects us all. And that's why I wanted to make sure that I put it onto the agenda for us to consider. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Wright?
Yeah, and I agree with Councillor McManaman, but I mean, I think we need to support this, but support it in a way that indicates that we need the jobs kept in Ontario, not necessarily, I mean, the letter that was attached to it is definitely not one that suits us, but if we could just send a reply and copy down, or send a letter to the Premier and copy it to them saying, we support keeping jobs in Ontario. I think that's basically what we need to do.
Councillor Lemon?
Well, you know, with all due respect to Oshawa, I believe that we don't have a lot of auto manufacturing here except for Tenneco now. And I really think that we should be saying, yes, keep the jobs in Ontario, all of Ontario. In other words, no, I disagree with the part that's saying a letter of support for the continued production of the GM Autoplex in Oshawa. Well, that says that we shouldn't have diversity within Ontario or located in other areas. I don't believe that all the auto jobs should be taken by one municipality at the expense of all the others.
Good, thank you. Councillor Dodd and then Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd make a motion that we table this until we get further clarification from Monroe, or Tenneco, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Motion's now on the floor, but
You know, I'll support a motion to table, but I think this is something we should just receive. It's quite clearly trying to keep the jobs in Oshawa. It says nothing about any job leaving Ontario, and really, I think all we need here is a motion to receive.
well, I think Councillor Dodd's motion is to put it off for a couple of weeks and get a little more information. So I'll call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1. So that's carried. So we're now down to 11A reports. The first report is with regard to bylaw coordinator and bylaw enforcement. Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report to update council on our proposed model for bylaw enforcement as it returns to City Hall from police services. To give you a bit of background, as you recall, we did do an RFP earlier this year to contract out bylaw services to a third party. After going through that process, it became clear that perhaps that may not be the best model to work to the greatest advantage of the city. So we looked at instead bringing bylaw back in-house, hiring staff rather than a contract. The offer for the position was made to the existing bylaw officer, giving him the first right of refusal. He turned down the job, so we have since posted for 2 external bylaw officers, and that job is currently posted. We'll be reviewing resumes and hopefully appointing those people within the next month or so. I think this is a great entry-level career to anyone to come to the city, so it provides both an opportunity to the city as well as to these potential employees to start off their career in bylaw enforcement, potentially into police foundations.
Good, thank you. Discussion, questions? Deputy Mayor Wright.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. One, if I may, through you, Your Worship, to Ms. Allen. In the, I was just kind of looking for it, but in the report, it talks about the savings, and we have a savings. I can't find it.
No worries. Through your worship, I can speak to that. So the current model will be a savings over previous years. As you're aware, for a while there were 2 full-time bylaw officers. We're currently at 1. The position that we have posted now is has slightly less responsibility. So there's certain aspects of the job that we don't require the staff person to complete, and as such, they sort of are being paid at a wage that's fair for the responsibilities that we're asking. So for those 2 positions, there will be a savings over previous years of about $25,000. We're not necessarily going to see that immediately in 2017. However, we will see that once we are going full force, I suppose you should say.
Okay, and that was my question. Why will we not see the savings in 2017?
We are anticipating that we will contract out certain aspects. So we are looking for some support, additional training as we get those bylaw officers up to speed and off on their feet. And then once they're operating at full capacity, then we won't need those additional contract services to carry us.
Okay. Oh, sorry. And who do these bylaw officers report to?
They will report to Jeff Smith.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Worship. Kate, the bylaw that we have now, they don't work evenings and weekends, correct?
That's correct. They currently work Monday to Friday.
So this new model is evenings and weekends. Why the change? What's the strategy behind that?
By having 2 employees, it will allow for greater coverage. So we will have them for 35 hours a week, but we can be flexible as to when those hours are performed, allowing us to have coverage later into the evenings and on weekends, and still have at least 1 person working.
Okay, thanks, and I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Lemon.
Yeah, one question. Is this a greater saving than we would have achieved by contracting it out?
It's difficult to answer that question. Although we went through negotiating with the contracts, we didn't come up with a model that worked for the city. They did propose a few different scenarios. However, it's our opinion that they wouldn't have worked. We wouldn't have been able to provide the service that we wanted to at the level that we wanted to. So it's hard to say comparing apples to oranges. With the service level that we wanted to provide, I'm not sure that the contract service would have been able to do that.
Councillor Kepke.
My question is on the training. Do we currently have a bylaw enforcement officer now?
Yes,
And that person has to be contracted to train our new people?
no, that person, I'm not sure what his long-term employment plans are.
But there's no commitment on that individual to train our new people?
There will be some overlap, some shadowing, but there'll be additional training. There's some MELO training that happens in the spring, municipal law enforcement.
Officer, yeah, LEO.
As well as we have some support to get Jeff up to speed, as well as our new staff, just to know some of the procedures and processes that they need to follow, as well as some of the history that needs to come forward from existing cases.
Maybe get Mr. Ritchie, he's got his hand up to
If I
fill in
could, Your
some blanks.
Worship, very briefly, certainly with training them in customer service, I don't think we could have a better trainer than Mr. Smith, and as well as his understanding of bylaws and crafting of bylaws. We're going to have some additional support for Mr. Smith, who is quite busy at this time. So that is our plan. He will be absolutely giving them most of the training in customer service as well as ongoing education.
Others? Down here, any questions? Okay, Councillor O'Leary has moved the recommendation. All in favor? That is carried. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm wondering if we could move up item 5 on the chip wagon lease.
Okay, staff can do that. Don't know who's presenting it. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The chip wagon has been operating in the downtown, in the area around the farmers market for over 50 years, and it occupies a space of about 1,600 square feet. In 2012, the city issued an RFP for the operation of that space, and only one proposal was received at the time by our current operator, Paul and Nancy Vermillier. At the time, council approved a 3-year term with one, so that was for 13, 14, and 15, with one right of renewal for 2 further years. And so in April of 2015, the city did extend the term of the lease to December 31, 2017. So the lease generates about $6,000 in revenue each year for the city. So the purpose of the report is really to address 2 requests, one from the Vermilliers to assign the lease to Mr. Hussein, and then also from Mr. Hussein for a 10-year contract term. In terms of the assignment, staff recommends council approve the assignment of the lease from Vermillier. In terms of the 10-year contract, staff cannot recommend a 10-year agreement for a number of reasons. The first one is in order to ensure a transparent process and to gauge interest and ensure that the city is obtaining fair value, a competitive RFP process would be warranted sometime within that 10 years. So it's a long time. Secondly, the farmers market has plans for the redevelopment that certainly go hand in hand with what the city is planning in the Downtown River Precinct, and that's still a priority for council. So with the transformation of the area, the city may not want to tie itself into a long-term agreement for a particular space or for that space at this time. And although the current agreement includes a 90-day termination, knowing the plans for this area, the city would not want a business plan based on the assumption of a 10-year agreement, with the city then having to, in a couple of years in, invoke that 90-day clause. We do have a mobile food business bylaw. That bylaw does provide significant opportunities for mobile food businesses to be located on city lands, subject to an agreement with the city. So certainly the bylaw contemplates that perhaps, maybe not if in this particular location, there's a place for food trucks in the downtown. So the recommendation, Your Worship, is that council would grant the assignment of lease as per Section 4 of the agreement between the city and Paul Douglas and Nancy Vermillier for the market chip wagon, subject to the current provision, with the term ending December 31, 2017.
Discussion. Councillor Lemon.
Well, actually, I think it's been around for about 70 years. Originally, it was over on 2nd Avenue under the old City Hall. And at one time there, we had 2. But I agree with the recommendation, but if we're not ready by December 31st, 2017, we could grant a further extension under what is here, which I favor. The chip wagon downtown has been long-term tradition, which we don't want to lose. But it has not always been at the farmers market. It's been in other locations as well. At one time, we had one on 9th Street, right at the bridge, if you remember, a few years ago. And I think when we're redoing City Hall, we don't want to tie our hands. And although I visit the chip wagon regularly, I certainly think it's an important part of the downtown. But I, on the other hand, don't feel we can tie our hands at this point. So I definitely will support the recommendation. Has that been moved?
Not yet.
I will move it.
There we go. Other discussion, comments? Seeing none, going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. So that was number 5, so we're back to number 2, which I think is probably Ms. Coulter again.
Thank you, Your Worship. In June of this year, council made a decision to undertake a significant renovation of City Hall, and that the scope of the work requires that staff would be relocated from this building during construction. And there is an amount in the overall budget being carried for that relocation. An RFP was issued on July 12th. That RFP closed on July 27th, and there were specifications listed that were both mandatory, and those are provided for you, as well as optional considerations. There were 3 compliant proposals received, and they were scored on the basis of financial, the space, the location, the proponent and their understanding of the requirements, their history, experience, and then the presentation of the profile. The scores are provided for you, and three different staff marked those scores. And the buildings included the Professional Center, the former Keystone on 2nd Avenue, as well as Stobie Holdings and the Sweet Spots in the 1000 block of 2nd Avenue. Considering the scoring tool and the results of a tour that was done by staff as part of the process, staff are recommending the Professional Center be the location of our interim office space while this building is under renovation. The total lease amount for 18 months, and that's November 1 to April 30th, 2018, is $311,000. You may be wondering why we'd relocate earlier than it would seem that's necessary, and as council knows, the current condition of City Hall doesn't allow us to run the air registers, and to avoid putting temporary heat into the building, if we can do a staged move-in by November 1st, we won't need to worry about that heat. The space in this building will also allow us to move forward with the initiative of moving the engineering staff to work closely with the other members of the development team in planning and building, and that can be done in the building. So the recommendation is that Council receives the report and directs staff to negotiate a lease agreement at an estimated cost of $311,000 with 215-9417 Ontario Limited for temporary office accommodations for the duration of the City Hall renovation, and Council approve a bylaw to authorize the Mayor and Clerk to execute that agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon had his hand up first, I think, before.
Yeah, question that I have a concern because I go to the professional building for a number of reasons. Parking there is tight now. I do not know how many cars come to City Hall to work every day, but it's more than just a few. And people come to City Hall to get information, building permits, all that kind of stuff. I'm very, very much concerned with that location and the amount of available parking, because there isn't, like you've got as an example, the lab in there, and first thing in the morning, that is one busy spot with 20 or 30 people sometimes waiting. You've got a lot of service industries there, and I really question the evaluation process. Was parking a major consideration, and how many spaces would city be allowed?
Through you, Your Worship, the specifications did require 40 parking spaces, including 2 accessible spaces. The site at the professional building will dedicate 40 spaces immediately in a row, immediately adjacent to the building, to the city. We also have the benefit there of having Lot 4, which is the lot behind Pharma Plus, where staff would be able to park in that public lot. So we're fairly comfortable with the parking that can be provided at that building.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up, sure.
Yeah, that parking lot behind Pharma Plus, next to the old National Groceries, there's not a lot of vacant space in that, and that's going to impact the businesses in that area. I would suggest the City Hall staff could park in the 10th Street, I call the 10th Street North lot, adjacent to the bus depot. That parking lot is used minimally. And I think with that change, I think that would be a lot better. And the stores on 10th Street, for instance, rely on that parking lot for their clients.
If I could, Your Worship, we'll certainly work around the parking to make sure it works for the current tenants of the building as well as our staff, our visitors. So if we need to move some staff parking farther away, we will certainly do that to various freer lots. So we will work on that as we move forward.
Okay, Councillor Kepke, I think, had her hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple questions. One being, there's a statement in here that if the lease needs to be extended, that's a possibility. If the lease can be lessened, is there a reduction in costs, or is it fixed to the 18 months?
Through Your Worship, I believe it is fixed to the 18-month. It may take a miracle to be back in here before April. That would be a terrific thing. We can certainly talk about that as we move forward with the negotiations of the lease, if that's council's direction.
Okay, and my other question is, where do you plan on having the council meetings?
Through Your Worship, I have had very early talks with the CAO of the county, and we are looking at that as our first option. And she is certainly going to work with county council to see if that's possible. If not, we may move to other city sites, but I'm very hopeful we'll be able to use the county chambers.
So with their renovations taking place as well, it's a
The
possibility?
county chambers will stay in place until they're ready to move them.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor O'Leary, I think, had his hand up.
Thanks, through Your Worship, to the city manager. Just wondering, I'm just curious why we're moving engineering twice. That's the first question. And I don't think I've ever asked, what are we doing with the extra space at the Works Department once engineering's out of there?
The moving of staff first, Your Worship. I believe the benefits to staff, to begin with, all staff, to the ratepayer who ultimately we are here to serve, will be noticeable, tangible, and quite evident when we work together more as a team, make it more convenient for them, and again, for staff as well, working together, feeding off of each other. So we can't start that early enough, in my opinion, and waiting another 18 months to do that is lost time for the community. So that's my reason for bringing that forward. I guess I would say to council, watch the results and see as we move forward in some very busy times in the next 12 months, the benefit ultimately to the ratepayer from that move. What are we going to do with the facility there? We will be coming back to council with some options. Obviously, it is space that would be rentable. As well, we have struggled for a long time with having training. It may be something we set up as a city training facility. So there are a number of options. And as a team, we will discuss what we think is best and come back to council with several options. So certainly it won't be wasted space.
Thank you, and I would move that recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much. Through Your Worship, I think that you've done a great job finding another spot for us all together, because there's not that many areas in Owen Sound that you could put everybody all together. And I think it's fine. I had a little concern about the parking, but I think the parking will be okay. And I had a question, and my question was, it's gone right over my head. If I can think of it, then I will come back to you.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple questions on the parking as well. The first one is, do staff currently pay for parking here?
Staff who use it are charged an allowance for it, so yes, that was part of our CCA audit several years ago.
And the 40 designated parking spaces, is that primarily for staff to use at the professional building, or is this purely customer service in which staff then will be required to park and pay still in the municipal lots that are available, which there is availability. I know in the 900 block, that parking lot has all sorts of empty space, Monday through Sunday.
Through you, Your Worship, our thinking at this point is that those spaces would be primarily available for the public. There needs to be a certain number of spaces in close proximity for positions like the CBO, the parks manager, who are in and out frequently every day. There'll be some engineering staff in the same sort of boat. So there'll be a sharing of those spaces between municipal staff and then some designated specifically for visitors. That's not to say we can't use other spaces in that professional building lot, but those will be specifically dedicated and reserved for City Hall.
Okay, my concern is first and foremost that these are available for the public to conveniently get in there, whether it's a parking ticket that they're paying or whether they're seeing yourself or anyone at City Hall, customer service first. And if we've got all of our staff utilizing those parking spaces, and currently that they're paying for parking or getting an allowance, my concern was that all of a sudden it would be free parking for 18 months and not a very customer-friendly experience if there's no parking available. So if you've got something to monitor the use of parking and still consider that the majority of those spaces, I think, should be available for customers of City Hall. I hope that that staff is going to primarily be paying and parking in the public lots that are available. So,
Thank you, Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if the Director could give us an update. In the report, you mentioned we have to relocate before November 1st because we need temporary heat in the building. Why would we need temporary heat in this current building?
Through you, Your Worship, our heating and cooling system includes of a number of rads on the walls. There's about 52 of them in the building. The city did receive an order from the Ministry of Labor with respect to the condition of those registers because they have mold in them. The ministry has been flexible in working with us, that provided we don't turn those units on, we don't have to undertake the remediation, which would be over $100,000. So it's important that we've been able to sort of limp through a hot summer with some very sporadic air conditioning, but in terms of providing heat in the cooler months in the fall, it will be important for us to either provide temporary heat or be out of the building by that date.
Thank you. I just think it was important to note that the heating system to temporarily repair it would be over $100,000. So I think this is, I support the recommendation.
Good. From my point of view, it looked like all three of these are going to have parking issues. This is probably the best one to start off with. And from having over the years represented people that are at the counter, developers, et cetera, it's pretty important, I think, to try and get engineering and planning together as soon as we can, because it just works out so much better for people coming into the building that they don't have to run back and forth. So I think it's a great idea to be moving them twice and getting it done. Mr. Ritchie.
If I could, Your Worship, I'd just like to mention as well, the other two facilities we looked at were excellent facilities. It's just that this facility, based on our requirements, fit the city better. But the other two sites were certainly fine sites, Your Worship.
Yeah, nice buildings. Good. Thanks. Councillor Larry's motion. Oh, one more. Councillor Dodd.
Sorry, thank you, Worship. Through you to the Director of Corporate Services. So the spacing for 18 months is $311,328. What was budgeted past? Is this online for a budget when we did the overall budget for City Hall renovation?
Through you, Your Worship, this would be included in that total amount.
But it's online.
I believe so. Go ahead.
If I could, Your Worship, this is for the rent only. We will have some further costs there, perhaps, to make the facility something that all staff would want to be in for 18 months, and some other cost. Our budget for this line, I believe, was $500,000. So I think we'll be in good shape, but there will be some more investment before we're out of there.
Some moving costs. Councillor Kapke.
So the additional costs will include signage and that type of thing? And is this at the rear of the building that people will enter?
We won't all be on one floor, we won't all be together, but we'll be in the same building, somewhat similar to what we are in this
But the
building, Your
main
Worship.
entrance for regular traffic would be?
I'll let.
Okay.
Through you, Worship, we're thinking at this point that the main entrance for City Hall will be on the east side of the building, abutting 4th Avenue, and that there would be signage at the doors on that side. And that would be proximate to those parking spaces.
Okay, so additional as well will be moving costs, is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship, we are planning to do a staged move so that our two facilities staff, Mr. Christie and his helper, will undertake the move. So it will sort of move division by division, and it will make it more manageable with our staff doing that.
So the 500,000 takes into the rent, the signage, the moving, all of those things to make it comfortable for people to work there for 18 months?
That's
Is
correct.
that
We will
correct?
be moving as much office furniture as we can as well, but we will probably have to rent some additional office furniture. Those type of extra costs that just can't be covered at this time, but they will be covered in that $500,000 budget.
So what about the storage that's already on this site, as in the clerk's vault, for instance? Does that stay in there, or does that get moved as well?
Through your worship, staff are being encouraged right now to undertake proper records management. So we have staff at the Bay Shore, staff in the basement, getting rid of records which through the records retention bylaw we're no longer required to have. Staff are being asked to only move what's required. So we'll be moving some records to the Bay Shore, but at no cost. There's a storage room at this location that will provide the city with quite a large space for the storage of records, and there is an appropriate location for a vault that clerks and others can use.
Okay, any others? Councillor Lemon?
Yeah, that east entrance door to the professional center, I don't believe has a button automated for persons with disability. I would assume that would be one of the conditions. Plus, there should be accessible parking, handicap parking in that area as well, if that's going to be the main entrance, because the current parking is at the south end, close to the lab, and there's just a limited amount of accessible parking there.
I'm sure those are all things that they're going to have to sort out once we get closer that we probably haven't sorted out yet. Councillor O'Leary moved that, correct? And so I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We're down to number 3. With regard to, I think Mr. Becking, 10th Street Bridge.
Thank you, Your Worship. As council is aware, the 10th Street Bridge spans the Sydenham River and carries 10th Street across the river. It's 10th Street is the main east-west arterial for the city, as well as being connecting link for Highway 6 and 21. The roadway carries something in the order of 30,000 vehicles a day. So as comes no surprise to anybody, it's quite busy. The bridge was built in 1911. It's 105 years old. It's well surpassed its design life, and we have some concerns with the strength of the concrete in the structure. The last time that the structure had any significant amount of work done to it was in the middle 50s. I guess to draw a long story short, the bridge is tired and is in need of replacement. Under the provisions of the Environmental Assessment Act, a class environmental assessment is required of the project, and it's the beginning of the process that will ultimately see the bridge to be replaced. I'm going to suggest to council within the next 3 to 5 years. Which is consistent with the consultant's recommendations from the last biennial inspection that was completed in 2014. In accordance with city policies and procedures, RFPs were called for the completion of the work. 6 bids were received. The highest rated bid was received from GM Blue Plan. And staff recommendation is that the assignment be awarded to GM Blue Plan Engineering Limited in the amount of $99,705 plus HST.
Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Becking, are there any connecting link funds available from the province for this?
Your Worship, Deputy Mayor asks a very appropriate question, and the short answer to the question is yes. This project, once the Class EA is completed, will be eligible for a grant totaling 90% of the total construction to a maximum of $3 million for the construction, the completion of the design as well as the construction. As soon as we have the EA completed, we will be making an application to the program through the Ministry of Transportation.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And a follow-up question. when construction does take place, is there any possibility in your mind that they can do half a bridge and then the other half?
Certainly that is a possibility, albeit a remote one. Given the nature of the existing structure, it does not lend itself to construction in halves, or more correctly, destruction in halves, because it's a earth-filled barrel arch. So the minute you cut the thing in half longitudinally, it doesn't do wonders for its strength. But that said, all possibilities are going to be considered, including a rapid bridge replacement. There is a methodology that can be applied which, in the best of all worlds, could see a bridge replaced in as little as 3 or 4 days. That won't be possible in this instance, again, because of the nature of the existing structure, but there are things that could be done to significantly accelerate the construction so that the amount of inconvenience to the public would be minimized.
That'll be quite a wild year in the city. I'll move the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Kepke, I think, was next.
Thank you, Your Worship. My concern, and I'm sure concerns of the public, is the rerouting of truck traffic on the other bridges and the wear and tear that will happen on them while this bridge is being built. So interesting question on half a bridge and the other half a bridge. If there can be any consideration at all on alleviating some of that truck traffic would be helpful.
Your Worship, one of the components of the current assignment will be to assess the alternatives in terms of detouring of traffic and various construction methods and methodologies. So that will all certainly be taken into consideration.
So, Mr. Becking, you saying we'll cross that bridge when we get there?
Your pun, Your Worship, not mine.
Councillor Lemon.
A couple of questions. In some areas, I have seen Bailey bridges erected when a major thoroughfare is down for a period of time. I'd like that to be considered because basically you're losing 50% of the capacity going across the Sydenham River because there are 4 lanes on 10th, 2 on 9th, 2 on 8th. The other thing is there's nothing that I've heard so far about a pedestrian bridge, which we did, I'm trying to remember which bridge it was now that we replaced, where we put a pedestrian bridge across temporarily, which is now across the Potawatomi River. We moved it to there after it was used. I really feel there's a lot of pedestrian traffic on 10th Street, and a pedestrian bridge is something we should look at because you can get those prefabricated, and that would allow a lot of people who walk downtown, and there are many, over 10th Street Bridge now, to do that. That's one thing I would like added in. And the other thing is a little bit of advice from what we happened at Harrison Park. That is a navigable waterway. I'd start with the federal government now because it's going to take years to get approval for a bridge on that river. When we did the bridge at Harrison Park over a depth of about 2 feet of water, that delayed us by about 6 months. And this is even more major because of past agreements about boats coming in, et cetera.
Thank you. Anyone down here? No? Okay. Deputy Mayor Wright has moved that. All in favor? That is carried. Number 4, Ms. Allen, midterm report.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an information report, so there's no action required from Council other than to receive the report. Council will recall that staff committed to providing financial reports each quarter. Tonight's report covers the period January to June of this year. One thing to keep in mind as we are going through the report is that many of the city services operate on a cyclical basis that doesn't necessarily match the calendar cycle. So I've done my best to annualize the costs and come up with what we expect the end of year surplus or deficit to be, but of course, as we still have half the year to go, those numbers could change. The report also focuses on the city's general operations and does not include comprehensive analysis of the separate boards, including the Owen Sound Police Services, the Union Public Library, as well as the Tom Thompson Art Gallery. However, I have touched base with each of those boards, and I have received confirmation that there's nothing out of the normal there. So we're going through each section. In the operating fund, the first item here relates to WSIB. Earlier this year, we did bring a Q1 financial report to corporate services, and at that time, our manager of Human Resources highlighted the WSIB costs expected for the year. So each year we do pay premiums on every dollar of payroll. However, at the end of the year, there's an analysis done of our actual experience compared to the expected experience used to determine that rate. And depending on whether our actual experience is better or worse, we may receive a refund or be charged a surcharge. Currently this year, based on the report that we just recently received from WSIB, we are expecting a surcharge of close to $350,000. This surcharge is driven by 2 cases of lost time, one in fire services and one in police services, and the full amount of that surcharge is not budgeted for. I've included grants in lieu in this report. At the regular council meeting in March 2nd, 2015, City Council approved waiving all fees related to site plan approval, building and plumbing permits associated with the residential hospice construction. So while the real cost, there is no real cost here, it is included as these do represent revenues forgiven. The bottom line cost to the overall surplus is only the amount that gets allocated to water and wastewater, and that's about $18,000. However, the total amount of revenues waived was $121,000. Hydro costs are slightly over budget. This is mostly due to the fact that we're just catching up now from years of somewhat inaccurate and untimely billing. We are now receiving all of our bills from Hydro. I do have confidence that the bills are correct and they are up to date. However, some of our budgets were not quite sufficient in order to meet the actual expenses, and as such, we are under budget, or we are over budget by roughly $65,000. You will see some adjustments in the 2017 budget to make sure that those are adjusted to reflect what the actual costs are. The next section relates to snow removal in city lots. This is not winter control performed by the city, but rather contracted snow removal for several parking lots throughout the city. The current snow removal tender closed in September in 2015. In that tender, each lot was tendered separately and awarded to the lowest compliant bidder. The outcome of the tender was generally that new contractors were responsible for snow removal at each location, and the rates varied from previous years. The most significant variance from budget here is about $30,000 at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center, so we're about $30,000 over budget there. We have reviewed the invoices to ensure that the charges are legitimate and they do reflect actual snow events, comparing them to other invoices in other lots. And they do represent, much of the charges do represent special requests for salting and sidewalk clearing, which are over and above the fee quoted for the snow removal within the tender. It was noted by staff that the level of service received in 2015-16 winter season was a significant improvement over the prior years. So now for some positive variances. Wage gapping. During budget deliberations, it was recognized by council that there were several positions that were vacant, known to become vacant or would be vacant for part of the year. In order to keep stable budgets, we don't necessarily reflect those savings unless they are known to be permanent. Council will recall that we did recognize $195,000 of sort of unidentified savings related to wage gapping. Currently, our total savings exceeds that amount by $45,000. Fuel is a positive variance. That's driven by two forces, obviously, the price of fuel as well as the amount of fuel that gets used, and both were working in our favor as fuel prices have remained low. And due to the mild winter, we have seen savings in two areas: transit, due to the smaller buses, and in winter control. So if fuel prices remain where they are right through to the end of the year, which is always difficult to predict, we do anticipate total savings in fuel of $120,000 over budget. Winter control sort of ties into what I was just discussing with fuel. Winter control costs related to road and street maintenance have come in below budget. The positive variance is over and above the $150,000 savings recognized in the 2016 budget process. So as a result of both the impact of weather as well as management oversight, material costs, which would be salt and sand, are estimated to be roughly $50,000 below the adjusted budget. Under waste management, we recently sold our, I believe it was the recycling truck, at auction. So we no longer are required to maintain that truck ourselves as part of the new contract that came into effect on June 1st. However, we had budgeted an entire year's worth of equipment costs. So since that truck is no longer incurring repairs and maintenance costs, our own fuel, we are going to see about $20,000 positive variance in the waste management equipment line item. The financial section of the report just summarizes the details that I've walked through just now. So based on those variances, we are currently sitting in a deficit position, and most of that can be explained by the WSIB surcharge, that unbudgeted surcharge. So each quarter we do get an update from WSIB. That number could change, and I do expect it to decrease. We will have options at year end if there is still a significant surcharge, including reserves and other contingency amounts that could be used to offset that. However, given our current situation, staff are very closely monitoring their budgets and ensuring that we can cut costs where we need to and save so that we can come in at year end and not be in a deficit position. The final part of this report is a summary of capital. This report or worksheet, I guess, has been provided to council in the past. And basically it's a summary of each capital project, what its status is as of the end of June, how much has been spent to date, and there are comments there from staff. One thing to keep in mind is the spent to date column. Even if a project is complete, it may not include all of the costs. These represent invoices paid, so if there's still invoices to come, then they will not be reflected here. As well, the report does not include or show how projects are funded. So just because an item is under budget, it may not have an impact on our year-end surplus or deficit. If that item was funded from reserves or from other source of funding, then other than tax, then the variance won't be reflected in the surplus at year-end.
Good, thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Yes, the recycling truck that we sold, was there a reserve fund for that vehicle? Because most vehicles have a reserve fund. And if so, what happens to that money?
There is a reserve fund for both recycling and waste equipment, so the proceeds of sale, which I can confirm were insignificant, will be transferred to the reserve.
But there was an existing reserve for that piece of equipment, was there not?
That's correct. It will go into the existing reserve.
So it'll go into other equipment reserves or what?
That will be to be decided at this point.
That will come back to council, your worship, for a decision on exactly how we may allocate those funds, but you're correct, it could go into other equipment reserves.
Ones
The
that
council
are
decision.
in a bad state.
We'll report to council fully on the reserves, and you may decide to put them there or do something else.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Mayor By. Two questions, and perhaps our police board representatives might answer this, but our police capital budget is a little over, and I was just wondering if that is just the roof repairs or what that may be, and then I had a further comment after that.
Through your worship, that last line in the capital spreadsheet represents police service board capital. Each year they submit a certain amount that they will use tax funded to fund their capital. Any amount that they do go over at year end is generally funded through their own revenues, which are through the police record checks. So they use those revenues to offset the amount that goes over and above the request that they made for tax funding. I don't expect it to be over budget at year end, I guess, is the message.
And second one is a point here. We approved, and it's in here, $85,000 for replacement of lights at Duncan McClellan Major Field in the budget. It's not started yet, but it's in the planning stage. I wonder, I mean, these are my comments, but I know last year Ferndale, and I was up there twice in the last couple of weeks for ball tournaments, and they had a windstorm last November blow over their light standards. And I had a good chat this weekend with a fella and inspected 6 new steel poles inserted into deep concrete columns with new LED light standards on the top, bright enough that a lady was reading a book that night watching the game, kinda. And we've also got some other peripheral items going on at Duncan McClellan in terms of just the light standards themselves. They're getting into some disrepair. We've also had Slow Pitch come forward to us at committee and then forward to council about the lack of playing diamonds. I know Councillor O'Leary, you and I have played a lot of fastball in our life. I just wonder if maybe there's a more fulsome discussion we could have on that whole topic, which could come forward and identify that $85,000 right now as something that can be part of that. I know a general diamond to the corners is $240 and Duncan McClellan's $225. So as part of a bigger discussion, perhaps we can assist Slow Pitch, which is the growing user of the fields, providing a little bit more field depth and tackle this lighting issue in a bigger way yet. So just my thought.
Others? Councillor Thomas was next on the list.
I just had a question about the, pardon me, snow removal at the Julie MacArthur $30,000 overage for clearing sidewalks and salting. And I was just wondering if that was not planned for, who was supposed to be doing that work, and can we accommodate that somehow in the future?
Through you, Your Worship, it's noted in the report that the level of service was dramatically improved and appreciated. At our last meeting with the Y, our Joint Operation Management Committee, I put the Y on notice that the level of service would not be the same in the coming year. And the agreement with the Y, the Joint Operating Agreement, says that the city is responsible for snow removal, and it is at our standards. So we did work with the Y last year. We did do extra sidewalk clearing and snow or salt application. However, that's just not at a sustainable price. So we'll be looking to modify that level of service this year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just first of all, I think this mid-year report card on finances is excellent. I think this is, it's good to have a snapshot right now of where we're at long before we get near the end and find out where it could be in trouble. So that's my first comment. The second one is I would encourage the other boards, I don't know if they do this, the library, the art gallery, and the police board, but if they don't, I would encourage them to do this or bring this type of thing forward, because I know sometimes at the end of the year we get the boards come forward and sometimes in deficit positions, and if they could work at this, that maybe they'd be able to avoid it. So that's just a comment. I did have the question about the snow removal, but that's been taken care of. The winter control materials, did I hear, Ms. Allen, did I hear you say that, so you're anticipating 48,000, that's assuming a normal November and December? Is that, it's not 48,000 and then if, not including November, December?
Through your worship, that does anticipate a November and December that has reflected years past.
Right, okay, thank you. I had one other question. Oh, on the capital budget, there's a number of items that were deferred. And the majority of those, I believe, did we have a report is that to pay for the roof at the police station? Is that what most of those are? Not all of them, but vast majority?
Through your worship, there are a few items that were deferred for the police station roof, as well as to be allocated. I think within the Bayshore there was some reevaluation of priorities there, so some of those projects were deferred in order to have funds for others that were determined to be a higher priority. But for the most part, the deferred projects do represent allocated funding to the police station room.
Great, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary was next.
My question was still the same $30,000 that Councillor Thomas was talking about. Can we change the way we do contracts? Like, I just find it annoying that, as Mr. Becking can tell you, we have a hard enough time with our own snow removal budget because we can't predict our winters. But if we have a contract and with a company, and that company can still come back and touch us up for another 30 grand, are we doing something wrong with our contracts?
Through you, Your Worship, I understand that the way the contract was issued is that they didn't come back on their own initiative, they were called back. So there were times when the request would go to Mr. Follis, he would ask for the contractor to come back, and then we were billed for that. So we'll be creating a different expectation this year, hoping for less snow, and work toward staying on budget in that area.
Mr. Ritchie?
If I could, Your Worship, to simplify it, if we get the same winter next year as we had this year, Ms. Coulter is saying that cost will be down because we're not going to have them back as often.
Go ahead.
I understand that. I just mean, like, to me, it doesn't matter if the number when we did the contract was $30,000 higher. That's fine with me. At least we know what we're paying. It's when we pay that contract price and then they come back and tack on another 30,000. I just think there's got to be a way to shut that down so that the price is the price. That's all.
Ms. Allen?
Through you, Your Worship, the way the tenders were quoted was on a per event, per lot. So there wasn't really a threshold for each lot or each contract. It would just be a cost per, I would say, visit to the lot. So there wasn't a total contract price associated with each tender or each contractor.
That makes sense. So there isn't excessive, it's the excess of what we budget for it, not necessarily the contract. Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Gregg, yes.
Thank you, Rabbi. I forgot one thing. It's the most important part of my whole story. In speaking with the fellow in Ferndale, the total cost for replacing the lights, including the wiring, was $70,000, which is why I'm wondering if this one particular item for $85,000 for just the light fixtures themselves should come back to the Community Services Committee for a more fulsome discussion. I wonder if we could get a report on that ball diamond, that complex.
Ms. Coulter?
Through Your Worship, staff have been working to spec out those new replacement LED lights. At this time, it's not the poles that are being replaced, but just the lights on them. They'll be more energy efficient. There should be a cost saving. There would be a significant cost, you know, whether it's warranted or not, of removing those light standards, placing new ones, but regardless, the LED lights would be usable either where they are today, or if there was ever a decision to move those light standards and extend that outfield, that could be considered. It would certainly be my recommendation that we continue to move forward with the LED light project that was included in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Others? Okay, did anyone move that? I don't think they did. Someone want to move receipt of the report? Councillor Thomas?
So moved, Your Worship.
And all in favor? That is carried. That was number 4, so we're down to number 5. Well, we've already done that. Down to number 6, Mr. Becking resurfacing project.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council will recall you awarded the annual asphalt resurfacing tender at your last session. It was awarded to Sutherland's Construction in the amount of $324,791.09. When we include the internal costs that will be accumulated over the course of the balance of the project, we can expect a final project cost of somewhere around $336,900, which means that we'll have a surplus in this account of about $45,600. At the last session, staff asked council to consider the possibility of extending the contract to include 15th Street East from 3rd Avenue to 6th Avenue, also known as St. Mary's Hill. There was a suggestion that perhaps we should reconsider that option in favor of two other roads, namely Moores Hill and Alpha Street. In the end, you elected to refer the matter back to staff and for a further report, and this report satisfies that direction. We've looked at the two roads that were suggested. In the case of Moores Hill, we know that we've got problems under the road with the drainage, as well as we've got problems with the retaining walls and the sidewalks adjacent to the roadway. That means that the work that's required on Moores Hill is going to be far more extensive than what would be normally covered off by a resurfacing contract. So that project is currently being scheduled for reconstruction in the 2021-2022 period. With respect to the suggestion of Alpha Street, the roadway, the water main under the roadway is in extremely poor condition. It's got so many patches on it. It's almost pure stainless steel from one end to the other. And one of these days, those Band-Aids are all going to come loose. So again, it's not suitable for a resurfacing type of treatment. That being the case, staff reconsidered its earlier recommendation with respect to the St. Mary's Hill. Unfortunately, the funds that are available will only be sufficient to deal with about half of the stretch of roadway. And while it's not essential that we do the entire section of roadway in one shot, it's certainly highly desirable. So on the basis of the foregoing, it's staff recommendation that the surplus in the current year be placed in reserve and brought forward at a later date for funding of future works.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Couldn't agree more. Move the recommendation.
Discussion. Oh, Councillor Lyman's got his hand up.
Just a question of clarification. If the Alpha Street water main is in such bad condition, when is it to be replaced?
Again, it's in that, Your Worship, it's in that 2020, 2021.
That far, if it's that bad and we're leaving it that long?
There's also an awful lot of other needs within the system, Your Worship, that are equally as severe and in need of attention.
The reason I'm asking is that hill gets a huge amount of truck traffic, and I have a concern.
We're aware of it, Your Worship. We'll keep, we'll, as you know, if there's more breaks, we'll continue to add patches and repairs to it as best we can.
Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the Director. On Moores Hill, you mentioned about the retaining wall and drainage issues, etc. I know time flies, but it doesn't seem like that long ago that those gabion baskets were put in along Moores Hill. What is the life of something like that?
15 to 20 years is not an unreasonable length of time to expect. But the difficulty that you experience with gabions is they have a tendency to settle over time. And that they bend out of shape and so forth, and lose their effectiveness as a retaining structure over time. The sidewalk is not in the best of condition, and we also have drainage issues there. Again, we have, particularly in the winter, we have difficulty keeping that sidewalk free of ice. So it's going to be a situation where we're going to have to go back in and redo it at some point.
So when you do the retaining wall in that area, or a retaining wall, it would be a different type that you would probably look at, something that would last longer?
Not necessarily. I'm not sure that I'm in a position to answer that kind of a question at this time, Your Worship. Certainly we'll examine how the gabions have performed to date, and is there a need for a different type of retaining wall that may be more suitable the situation.
Yeah, that's always been swamp up in there, oddly enough, halfway up the hill. Councillor McManaman?
And sorry, just so I'm clear to the director, there's $45,000 you want to put in reserve, and that's because it couldn't do all of St. Mary's, it could only do a portion. Is that, have I got that right?
That is correct,
Okay.
Your Worship.
And the second comment, just something, just more of a comment, both on Alpha and Morris Hill. We ran into this with 2nd Avenue East heading north of 12th. The underground was in poor shape, so we never repaved it because at some point we'd have to replace the underground. It was in bad shape, but the problem was we could never afford to replace the underground, so we were never paving it. And this went on year after year, and the argument was sound. We have to replace that underground at some point. We could never afford to replace the underground, therefore we never paved it. And at some point you had to make a sort of cost-benefit analysis. Are we really going to do this work in the next, whatever time frame you want to use, if it's 5 years or 10 years? Maybe sometimes you do want to pave extremely poor conditions of road, even if the underground's bad. And I'm not having the argument here. I'm just saying when the next paving budget comes up, because there are a couple sections there that maybe it's worth putting some money down, knowing that even knowing that 5 years from now you might have to rip it up. Anyway, just a comment.
I think we're going to call the question. It's Councillor O'Leary's motion. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks. Number 7, Ms. Allen, I think.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was just at our last meeting that Council approved a budget amendment to set up a cold site at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center. This is a request for approval for a sole source request. Because the item is over $30,000, it does require council approval. This is a component of that cold site plan, and it's the purchase of the actual servers, the storage units that will be used to house the cold site. It does meet the sole source or single source procurement requirement that it ensures compatibility with existing product, equipment, facility, or service required, and the supplier has the skills related to an existing knowledge of the nature of the service. So these units will be compatible with our existing information technology infrastructure, and they are coming in within the budget amount that was included in that report Council received last week of $83,200.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd move the recommendation.
And thanks. Question from Deputy Mayor Wright.
Why the high maintenance fee?
Sorry?
There's a high maintenance fee. It's not this. Is there a maintenance fee to this?
I don't believe there's a maintenance fee associated with the purchase of the equipment.
Okay, then it's the next report. Okay, thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Got it under sole source.
To Your Worship, to Ms. Allen. Kate, there's $51,500 left. Is that accounted for?
Yes, the total budget was $134,000. This represents one part of that, but there were still additional costs associated with setting up the cold site.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to call the question unless there's others. No, I didn't see anyone's hand move. All in favor? That is carried. Thanks. It's the Ms. Allen show, I think.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report asking for council approval to extend an agreement with Rogers for leased fiber within the city for a period of 5 years. The City of Owen Sound currently leases fiber at City Hall, the Fire Hall, Public Works, and the Water Treatment Plant. The Fire Hall connection currently allows the Fire Hall and the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center to connect back to the city and runs at a speed of 100 megabytes per second. Public Works connections allow the Public Works building to connect back to City Hall and also runs at a speed of 100 megabytes per second. And the Water Treatment Plant currently allows the Water Treatment Plant, Wastewater Treatment Plant, and the Bayshore Community Center to connect back to City Hall as well. Under this new agreement, the changes to the contract allow for faster connections and will save the city over the term of the contract $10,500. Other vendors did confirm that they wouldn't be able to serve all of the locations, so Rogers was the only proponent, I suppose, that we would be able to receive these services from.
Okay, thank you. Comments, discussion? Councillor O'Leary.
I just have one question. It might be a stupid one. The connection of Public Works would no longer be necessary as we have installed a wireless solution. why can't we use wireless like everywhere?
I might defer to our
That might be a
manager of
question for
IT.
Sean.
It's slightly out of my expertise.
In order to run the wireless connection, you have to have line of sight between the buildings, and currently at the present time, we don't have that. We do have line of sight from the rec center to the public works, so we're able to utilize that technology in that case.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Others? Councillor?
I'd move the
Thompson?
recommendation.
Okay, all in favor? That is carried. Ms. Allen, do you want to give the next report?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is another single source approval request. This one is for an asset management solution. We are looking for council to approve the purchase of a WorkTech asset management module. This module will integrate with the WorkTech modules that we already use for time and materials reporting and recording. The purpose of the additional WorkTech module is to ensure information is accessible across all departments, improve our long-term preventative maintenance of our capital assets and our asset management plan, to decrease cost overruns caused by lack of visibility to the true costs of performing work and maintaining assets, and to implement a work management solution to assist with keeping our city's assets in good operating condition. Similar to the purchase of the servers, the clause within the purchasing bylaw that allows for single source is to ensure compatibility with an existing product. Since we do use WorkTech now, this product will integrate seamlessly to our current financial information system. The total cost of the project is $48,000. The current budget does have a $50,000 line item for asset management software, so this is within that amount. And there will be an annual maintenance fee of 20%, and that will be reflected in future operating budgets.
And I think Deputy Mayor Wright has a question for you.
I apologize. This is the sole source one I want to ask on. There's a fairly high maintenance fee on this one of 20%. For how long does that go?
That is the annual support fee that goes along with the software for as long as we utilize the software. I can say that is consistent with the maintenance fees that we would pay on all of our software modules for financial information systems.
So it's a maintenance, it's a maintenance fee for them if we're in trouble or anything, that they're available.
It's all of the support that goes along with using the software.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship. So it's 20% of what? So the overall project's $48,474 with the annual maintenance fee of 20%. What's the 20% of?
Might defer to our asset management coordinator, as she is.
So hi, yes, it's actually $3,500 per year is what the maintenance fee would be. Currently, we pay approximately $12,000 per year for the software that we use, so it would be a reduction in the annual maintenance fee.
Got it? Good. Councillor Kepke?
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly realize it's important to give staff the right tools to do their job, so I'm happy to move this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Just quickly, wanted to compliment staff on staying under budget.
Any others? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Number 10, Ms. Coulter?
Thank you, Your Worship. In May, Council had approved a budget amendment to reallocate some funds to replace Section 1 of the failed roof at the Police Services building. The estimated cost of that work was $226,000. We called a tender in compliance with the purchasing bylaw. There were 8 contractors who attended the site meeting, with 6 contractors submitting the following prices. The low price is T. Hamilton and Son Roof Incorporated. They're $17,000 over budget. Recall here we are using Garland. They oversee the work together with our staff, our facilities manager, and so the recommendation is that we'll award the work to T. Hamilton and Son Roofing at the lowest bid, $209,000.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you. Through your worship to Ms. Coulter. Pam, do you know anything about the warranty here?
Through your worship, there is a warranty. Using Garland enables us to oversee the work. They do post work inspections during the warranty period, make sure that everything's being addressed during that time, working with our staff. So really, it's a positive situation. So it does have a warranty. I would have to let council know how long the warranty goes, but I do know that there is diligence during that warranty period to make sure that there aren't issues, and if there are, they're addressed.
So I was just wondering with the warranty, like, would each one of those bids have the same warranty, or is that something that would be in the RFP?
It would be in the RFP, I just can't tell you what it would be. So they would be compared on the same basis of the same warranty.
Okay, thanks, and I'd move that recommendation.
Okay, other questions? Going once, going twice. Call the question. All in favor? Carried. What's next? Number 11?
Thank you, Worship. So this relates back to the resolution of the County of Grey, and I apologize for bringing this directly to council, but given the timing of the response requested on that resolution, we thought we'd bring it here. In February of 2015, the province initiated the simultaneous review of 4 provincial plans. The only one that really impacts the City of Owen Sound is the Niagara Escarpment Plan, and that's the focus of this report. In May of 2015, there was a report through our Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee, and they really recommended that once we get the draft amendments, we'd see how they impacted Owen Sound and report back through the committee. In June of 2016, so just this past June, staff attended a full-day technical briefing on the proposed amendments to all 4 of those plans. The last comprehensive review of the Niagara Escarpment Plan was over 20 years ago. In reviewing the proposed amendments to the policies with respect to the urban area, staff find that the policy updates reflect the priorities of the provincial policy statement and incorporate aligned terminology and approaches. Changes to the urban area objectives, if implemented, will require consideration at the time of the city's next official plan 5-year review. So the impact of the changes on the urban area is really anticipated to be minimal. In addition to the policies, mapping updates are proposed to include site-specific use boundary amendments and the addition of new lands in the Niagara Escarpment Plan area. There are, however, no changes to the designation or no new areas proposed in Owen Sound. So those areas where there are changes are outside the city. So the County of Grey has circulated a draft motion and background document. Because the changes in the Niagara Escarpment Plan area do not directly impact Owen Sound, staff have not undertaken a detailed technical review of that mapping to in fact determine if the mapping and the expansion of the area meets the technical requirements for inclusion in the plan. So are those in fact escarpment protection, escarpment natural areas? We just don't feel that we're prepared to make a recommendation whether or not they meet the characteristics of the plan. We just haven't spent time doing it because it doesn't impact the city directly. We do, however, support a collaborative process, more detailed mapping to assist those who are affected in understanding the proposed changes, and we certainly support an extension to the timeline to allow that to happen. There has been one extension to October 31st, but can certainly support a recommendation to go beyond that. So the recommendation is that Council would receive the report for information and provide the following resolution in response to Grey County's request. And the first point is on the collaborative process, and the second is on the extension of the timeline. And we would be asking the clerk to submit the report with Council's resolution as the city's comments, with a number of copies going to different ministries and agencies.
Thank you. Comments, discussion? Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much. I would certainly move that recommendation that we do to support the county on this. The county has had a meeting with the affected municipalities. I did talk to Pam before that meeting, and I did go to the meeting, although I know Owen Sound wasn't as affected, but the entire county does have quite an effect with this, and I know that some of us are of two minds. We think there should be some protection, but also that it is really being considered a land grab. And so the result of the motion that came out of that meeting, then the affected municipalities, we did meet, the county delegation met with the minister at AMO, and the minister also agreed that there should be more collaboration. So as we all know, the date's been extended to October 31st, but we're asking for it to go even past there so that when this does happen, that we're sure that the right thing is being done.
Just want to clarify, you're moving the city staff
I'm moving the
recommendation?
city staff motion.
Okay. Other discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Number 12, is it Mr. Becking? Transit advertising?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Back in 2006, the city entered into an agreement with Pattison Advertising. It was a 10-year agreement with a 5-year extension to provide advertising on bus shelters, transit buses, and then at the transit terminal. The report provides you the history of revenues from the current arrangement. At present, and for the last 5 years, the city has received 25% of the shelter and bus interior revenue and 50% for the advertising on the exterior of all buses. Pattison, as part of the deal, provides the bus shelters to the city, and they cost approximately $5,500 a piece. Given the number that we currently have spread through the city, that totals something like $49,500 worth of bus shelters that are provided at no cost to the city. Given the relatively sparse nature of competition in the marketplace for this type of advertising, Pattison, while it's not the only firm around, it's certainly one of the major players, and therefore that's reflected in our revenue stream. Given the arrangement that was originally negotiated between the parties, staff's recommendation is that we extend the existing contract for the additional optional 5-year period as provided for in the contract.
Okay, thank you. Discussion, Councillor Lemon.
Well, why year one, is that the year one of this extension? And why is it 0%?
Your Worship, no, the revenue stream that will apply to the next 5 years is the same revenue stream or cost-sharing arrangement that was the preceding 5 years. So in other words, our share of the revenues will be 25% of the shelter and bus revenues and 50% of the revenues from the advertising on the exterior of the buses.
And I haven't, in the times I've been on the bus, actually noticed very much interior, if any, advertising.
Your Worship, we have raised this issue with the company. They have not been shy about trying to secure advertising, but Owen Sound is a relatively small market, and there is limited call for advertising. So we're getting as much as we can get out of it, and we will certainly be encouraging the contractor to do his level best to continue to do so.
Going to go to Deputy Mayor Wright. She's
Sorry.
There we go.
Plenty of time with that
We
fan
thought
tonight.
we thought you were mumbling.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to inform Councillor Lemon that today, for the first time, I did see advertising on a bus, and it was YMCA employment opportunities.
Other discussion? Someone want to put their hand up and move it? Councillor Dodd, you're the fastest. Quick draw. Councillor Dodd's moving it. All in favor? That is carried. Poulter, I think, Conservation Authorities Act.
Thank you, Worship. In October of 2015, this council had provided comments on, to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry on a discussion paper on the Conservation Authorities Act review. At the time, the report found that conservation authorities' technical expertise, their local knowledge, and existing relationships with municipalities position them well to support municipalities and provide local service delivery on behalf of provincial ministries. It also noted that a more equitable, reliable, and sustainable means of funding was necessary. The ministry has now released a document entitled Conserving Our Future, Proposed Priorities for Renewal, and the deadline for those comments is September 9th. So the Conservation Authority has, like the Grey Salvo Conservation Authority has, is not going to be providing new comments on the discussion paper, and Conservation Ontario have a collective position, and there's 4 key messages, and those are provided to council in the report. They talk about the core mandate is beyond just natural heritage. The conservation authorities are the delivery agents for integrated watershed management, that they need to work at an interministerial level as opposed just through one ministry, and that such options as shared CA services or restructuring should be examined, and that conservation authorities are committed to improving service delivery. Upon reviewing both documents, it's clear that there is more need for discussion between the ministry and the conservation authorities that must work within the framework of that legislation. The city provided detailed comments in 2015, and those conclusions still remain relevant. Municipalities are asked to implement provincial policies that require increasing technical expertise, while support from those provincial ministries is often distant, time-consuming, and sometimes difficult to obtain. The local property taxpayer, who funds conservation authorities to a large extent, cannot be continually asked to pay for services once paid for by the province that benefit all Ontarians. Conservation authorities are well positioned to provide this technical expertise to municipalities and local service delivery on behalf of provincial ministries. So it's recommended that the city resubmit the letter from October of 2015 as comments on the latest stage of the Conservation Act review. So the recommendation is council would have the clerk provide this report together with council's resolution, that we reiterate our request that where the province institute a mandated program for authorities, that 100% of the operating and capital costs should be borne by the province, and that we would support the 2 statements made by Conservation Ontario in their latest letter of July 28th.
Thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to move the recommendation. The Conservation Authority has been looking for the municipalities to comment on this review, and so in that case, I'm happy to move it.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon.
Well, you know, there's one line in here which I agree 300% with, that where the province institutes mandated new programs for police, conservation authority, and a lot of other groups, 100% of the operating and capital costs should be borne by the province. I think this is very good, but I think we should be sending one through to those responsible for such things as police, that if you want a new program, you pay 100% of the cost. Don't just stick it to the municipalities.
Other comments? Councillor Thomas.
I'll just quickly follow that up. I'll say more about AMO later, but that was certainly a theme at AMO this year, loud and clear.
Good.
So Councillor Kepke's motion, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. One more report from Mr. Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Hangars C3 and C4 at the airport are owned by Mr. Dwayne Henderson. Mr. Henderson has made an arrangement, as is his right under the lease agreement, to sell the hangars in question to a Mr. Michael Belanger. In order for the deal to be effective, the first act council must take is to cancel the lease with Mr. Henderson, and then pass a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute such documents as are necessary to enter into a new agreement with Mr. Belanger. Staff are recommending that you proceed to take those two acts. The proposed new lease will only be for the period of August 31st, 2016 to December 31st, 2016. This will give you the ability to deal with service review and whatever recommendations may come out of that as it relates to the airport. The two hangars in question total 3,500 square feet. The proposed lease rate is 36 cents per square foot, which will mean an annual revenue for the city of $1,260 per year, or $118 and change per month.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, through your worship, to Mr. Becking. Is there a demand for hangars? Like, would there be a waiting list or anything, or no?
To the best of my knowledge, no. There is no pent-up demand at the present time. There has been concerns raised by the airport contractor that council's consideration of the future of the airport may have a dampening effect on the demand for hangar space.
Okay, thanks. Well, just for the record, I don't think council's been negative towards the airport at all. So I'll be clear about that. I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Discussion, others? Mr. Becking, we just built some new heads. The owners just built new hangars within the last few years. There's a new strip of them?
I believe the last one was built about 16 months ago or thereabouts, Your Worship.
And so are all the locations, or all the lots for hangars filled on the most recent road that was put in?
No, I do not believe that's the case.
So, okay.
There is still available space as well. My understanding is that there is provision for extending further to the north with another row of, at least one more row of potential property for hangar use.
But the Lane Road isn't in there yet?
No, it is not, Your Worship.
Good. That's how I remembered it. Thank you. Councillor O'Leary's motion, all in favor? That is carried. So we're down to 11B, which is the consent agenda items. Ms. Stobel, do you want to give us a run through?
Your Worship, on the consent agenda this evening, there are planning notices with no report. Final approvals were issued for business licenses, including Richard and Barbara Robb for home-based subcontracting, drapery installation, and a home consultant business. Hawker and Peddler license for on-spot apparel, which relates to the softball tournament August 5 to 8 for the sale of t-shirts, and a Hawker and Peddler license for the 3rd annual Skate Jam for sale of skateboards and associated products on August 13th. Correspondence received, a listing of that appears at item 11B3. It's a fairly small consent agenda this evening.
Good, thank you. So I need someone to move to receive 11B1 to 11B3 on the consent agenda. Oh, Travis has got it written. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gregg, that City Council hereby receives items 11B1 to 11B3 on the consent agenda dated August 22nd, 2016.
And all in favor? That is carried. Thanks. 11C is minutes of boards and committees for approval. Communities. Sorry?
Information package.
Wasn't that, we just moved that. That was part of 11B. So we're down to 11C is minutes of the Community Services Committee held August 9th, 2016. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I'll run through these minutes. As you can see, they are there was quite a few items here and quite a few sort of difficult items to deal with, so I'll just, I may take a bit of time here. The meeting started with a deputation from a local rock climbing enthusiast who asked that the city continue to allow rock climbing for recreational climbing for individuals, as has happened for many, many years. I'll point out that it was only recently that the city realized that some rock climbing was going on city property, an old road allowance. Before that, we all assumed it was the Conservation Authority property, but where it actually is taking place in this one section is actually city property, which has led us down this road to have to deal with it. Once we became aware that rock climbing was incurring on our property, the city's insurer advised us that we should have put a bylaw in place that prohibits that activity. They are not opposed to the activity taking place per se, as long as we have a process in place to manage the activity properly, rules and regulations and permits and such. So I would say if these minutes passed, a bylaw would come forward prohibiting rock climbing as a recreational activity in the West Rocks until such time as the process comes forward in the spring. Basically, when we discussed it, there would be one season, I guess you'd call it, of rock climbing not allowed there until such time as a process is in place. The process would include things, or the report that would come back through council on this would talk about risk management and working with the Niagara Escarpment Commission, because this is under their jurisdiction, assess the demand for recreational climbing, assess potential impact on the neighborhood for parking particularly, develop an emergency access route for any rescue operations, identify interest for other commercial enterprises and individuals within the community, have a public information session, so on and on. Basically, a bylaw in place right now to ban the activity to cover the city's liability, with a process over the winter months developed to allow it properly, allow it through a permit process in the spring. So that was the first part of the meeting. We can talk about that maybe a little bit more. Another very detailed report, and I will not go into great detail on this, from the community planner on smart growth for our communities and the new act that's come forward. Over 200 amendments in the Planning Act. Many of them are what you would call housekeeping, but others have some degree of impact on the city. Again, a very detailed report in the minutes, and I would suggest people go through that fairly detailed report. We had a wrap up for Doors Open, 19 sites this year, very successful once again. The dates for next year are June 3rd and 4th, are proposed, if council approves this, for June 3rd and 4th of 2017. Just one caveat. Traditionally, this event takes place during the busiest time of year for our planning division and building divisions. So to ensure, if we want to keep it at the level that I think we are used to, additional resources may be required, and they could be financial resources. At this time, they're talking about trying to work with co-op students and perhaps some of the site hosts taking on more, and some other city divisions, but just a caveat that something could be coming forward. There's a report card in here on the past Recreation and Parks Master Plan. We know that we are anticipating doing a new Parks and Rec Master Plan in 2017, or updating a Master Plan in 2017. It was asked at service review that we review the last one, so it's not just left sitting on a shelf. And as you go through it, you'll see that each item has, what has occurred with that particular item. So it's quite interesting to look at. It was done in 97, I believe. 3 themes come out of it: that for the cities to successfully implement many parts of the plan, partnerships are the key, and that is going forward. Our message, I think, is on many, many things in recreation. If it's going to work, there needs to be partnerships with other community groups, with service clubs and the like. So it also talked about the regional rec center that now has been built since that report, and the impact that is going to have on the update that we do next year. And also talks about sharing resources and agreements with school boards for ball diamonds and gymnasiums and that type of thing. So Probably what was discussed is, or brought up as perhaps one of the best reports that we've ever received was a 116-page report coming from Service Review on a question that was raised about having spring and summer ice in the rec center. Is that cost effective? Is it worth it? Again, a 116-page report that looks at the staffing cost, the hydro cost, the gas costs. There's probably other costs that I haven't thought of, equipment, maintenance, and is it cost effective? And I think if you go through this report, you find that, first of all, our operating costs compared to some of our comparative communities in Guelph and Orangeville, we operate actually quite efficiently. Guelph is a little better off financially, but they also are closer to a larger urban center and can charge higher rates that we necessarily couldn't. So a number of items came out of it to look at how we can market it better, how we can perhaps close the facility, which is happening now if there are no rentals, to save money, look at service contracts to reduce costs, online bookings, more marketing, fees review. But it is hoped that master plan that we're doing next year will be able to have some expertise, I guess, bring in some expertise to talk about how we may, even though it's being run fairly efficiently, are there other things we can do? But I guess at the end of the day, when you crunch the numbers, it is cost effective for us to run summer ice, spring and summer ice. If it was removed, we would actually lose more money, which is because we make, it's a premium ice time, we charge a premium for ice in the summer, and that revenue is positive for the city as opposed to if it wasn't there at all. Keeping in mind that you would reduce costs, yes you would, but you would lose more revenue than you would reduce costs by closing it down, I guess is the bottom line. And also, and even though I've just gone over this, we did ask that presentation on this be made to council at some point to just detail this. It was raised at service review as an item to look at. Probably the most contentious, sorry, I'll just skip one. Harrison Park Erosion Control Project, we both know, or we all know there's several items at Harrison Park, an erosion on the west bank and south of the bridge towards the Mile Drive that is collapsing. Just an update on that and how they're going to fund it. But they are moving forward on tendering those projects and hoping to get them done in 2016. Probably the most contentious issue, I guess, would be on the proposal for an own sound forest school. We were, the city has been approached by a private for-profit business to offer an outdoor education program. I believe it's 2 days a week at Harrison Park during the school year. So basically September to the end of the school year. The school would be confined to designated areas in the park. There are 4 other forest schools in Ontario. They talk about proper respect of the forest and use of outdoor properties. They would work on open campfire management, river walking, off-trail activities, construction of temporary structures, building bat houses, that type of thing, bird houses, basically just an outdoor education school that would run in Harrison Park. I guess the contentious part, they would use the hall, the Harrison Park hall there, and pay for it as needed, as they booked it. The contentious part, I guess, to be fair to all committee members, it was a split vote that this did carry. To be fair, some committee members expressed concerns for allowing a for-profit business to operate in the park without any fee for operating in the park. Staff had the recommendation that did pass recommending a 1-year trial with the school to see how it goes, to see what the impact is, to see how many people. I mean, obviously, I think we'd all agree if we're talking about 5 people or we're talking about 55 students, it's a different discussion. Anyway, that motion did pass to try it for a trial year for 1 year, but there was concern about allowing a for-profit business to operate like that without charging them a fee. Trouble with that is we don't actually have a fee for just people showing up at Harrison Park to use it. So it is kind of a difficult one. We have trails that people use, you know, for-profit businesses use it, workout studios or fitness studios that use our parks. You know, there is I guess the bottom line was they aren't booking it for exclusive use. They are just showing up at the park and using it as they require. So anyway, with that, those are the minutes, Your Worship. I will move the minutes, and I'm open to any questions if there are any.
Deputy Mayor Wright has the first one.
Thank you very much. Councillor McManaman, on the Forest School, do you have the ages of the students?
I can't recall right off the top of my head, but it's young students. It's around 5 years old, something like, right, 5 to 7 is what comes to mind, if anybody wants, do you recall?
It's 18 months to 3 years, and then 4 years to 7 years, and then 8 years and up.
So there's 3 different levels.
And you're going to do outdoor fire management?
Outdoor, I think, education, outdoor activity, outdoor education, all sorts of different things, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Lemon was next.
I think this is a great idea. I'm a little hesitant to, we shouldn't be receiving something. I think perhaps the best way to do it would be to say to the gentleman or lady, whoever, that for the first year is fine, but after that we'll have to consider if there should be an appropriate fee. And I don't think what you've got here would prohibit us doing that after a year. Do we know what private landowners charge for these schools?
I don't believe we do, no. This would be the first forest school on a municipal property.
Right.
And to the other point, the intent certainly is after this year to reevaluate and look at it. And given the views of the committee, your comments, I think, will be well taken in hand.
Okay, and hopefully when we do the review, we will have what they pay in the private sector, because it's like the campground. We charge for that, and it's space. Now, the other question I've got has to do with rock climbing at Harrison, the old quarry up at on the West Rocks. People have been rock climbing there for the last 80 to 100 years. I know there's liability if somebody does a header off the cliff. I really think banning it until we've got our act together is a little bit of overkill. It's been going on when I was a kid, it was common. And people who lived in my neighborhood went up there and we used to climb. None of us ever fell, well, once, but it was just a short distance. But I think banning it is just, I just don't think it's appropriate.
Going to go to Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe, and I'm sure Ms. Coulter probably covered this in the report, but once we've been put on notice by our insurer, as long as we want to stand behind paying any damages, I mean, now that we know and our insurer is telling us this is what we need to do, I would strongly recommend we do it, or whatever damages are, we will be paying it entirely with no deductible. I know it seems harsh, but that's just reality.
Yeah, Councillor Lemon, I think we're caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I think we're at the bottom of the quarry. It's very hard, I know. But yeah, from that point of view, that once it's been on notice, but I think we should also not make it so difficult that people will just go ahead and climb. The other problem is, how are we going to enforce it?
So, Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Your Worship. And obviously, these were a lot of questions that came up at committee. But as the city manager has stated, one of the biggest concerns were that we need to get a policy in place to ensure that rock climbing in the future will be there. If we don't do this, we're going to have a liability on ourselves. We're not going to have to worry about paying a $10,000 deductible and then held out to just wash our hands and let our insurer pay it off. We're going to be worrying about paying off a huge liability claim if someone falls off those rocks if we don't do something here. So I think that was the biggest issue here, or the biggest thing that I got out of it all was, once we got a notice from our insurer noting that we were going to be on risk for this ourselves, we'll be self-insuring such a high hazard liability, we have to go forward with it. And that was the question of what were we losing? And the manager of Parks, Adam, noted that it was going to be about a 50-day process for them to get their things together. That takes out the fall season. They get the permits in place properly, and they can be climbing in the spring properly. We have proper coverage, and we have a management plan behind it. It's the safest way we can go to protect the financial interests of the community and the city, as well as ensuring that rock climbing has a future in the city of Owen Sound.
Okay, just one clarification. There was a fatality up in the West Rocks quite a few years ago where a gentleman fell down one of the crevices up there.
Yeah.
And that people can still walk up there without a permit.
I think the difference is that we have been advised, and we're well known now within our city limits, there's rock climbing going on. So walking, hiking, that's a little bit, it's a limit of hazard, limit of risk of doing that. I think that was a different scenario, though, was it not? It was a late at night kind of situation. This is, if we do not put this in place, the insurance company is saying, you do not have coverage. We will not cover you, and we will not cover you until you put the procedures in place. So it's.
Thank you.
Councillor Craig, I think you had your hand up a minute ago. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Bai. I have a couple questions and comments back to the Forest School. The first one I looked into last week, it's when you're dealing with children of any age, it's there's a heck of a lot of responsibility goes on you. So my first question was to the clerk's office. Has there been a business permit or license ever granted for any of these individuals or the companies? And no information was provided or found yet. No license has been granted. So that now is my very first concern. There's a procedure that one needs to go through when opening a business in Owen Sound. This is something that would get circulated through various city departments. The health unit may have a say in something like that. It's somewhat of a daycare or school. I don't know how it would be monitored, but that was a concern I had when there's no business license at this point for any of the companies that have been mentioned in the report. Further, they've got a manual that's released, and it comments that the community center will be our indoor space equipped with washrooms, kitchen, and even a warm fireplace. And the way it reads, it looks like there's an assumption that it's going to be available for full-time use. And we all know, being familiar with the park, that even washrooms are really limited beyond Thanksgiving when a lot of the facilities close up. The restaurant cannot be an option. The works department facilities can't be an option. So if you're really going to lean heavily on using it as it's commented in the handbook, then I think there's a normal fee has to be in place here, because otherwise you're losing the ability to rent it to other individuals, other groups through the day. They're going to have basic washroom needs through a good chunk of the year, and January, February, when it's minus 25 degrees, people are going to get cold, and I don't think we've got staff that can just be going back and forth or being available at a beck and call to open the facility and at a severely or substantially discounted rate, which is what's being asked for. And then just even another question, non-resident user fees apply to all sorts of different activities in the city, and is that something that had been contemplated or should be playing a role in here? But particularly a business license not being in place at this point. I wonder if we don't even have a loophole in our procedure or policy right now as how if something gets to this place, so to this stage.
Ms. Coulter may have comments on that.
Through you, Your Worship, just reviewing the draft agreement that we had at committee regarding the trial and looking at the requirements of the Forest School. They are required to do a variety of things, but including police records check, vulnerable records check. If council wanted to add ensuring that there's a business license, we could do that there. In terms of the non-resident fee, the fee for the rental of the community center simply took the half-day rate, prorated it to an hourly rate. So the fee didn't include a non-resident fee. We don't have that in our in the parks rental fee. Sorry, the last point. Oh, the availability of washrooms. There are washrooms at the outside of the restaurant that are maintained open 12 months of the year, with maybe exception of a few holidays like Christmas Day.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, Councillor McManaman. I'm just going to see where this is going. Councillor O'Leary.
I don't sit on this committee, but I did read the report on the Julie MacArthur arena that Pam did. Very, very good report. It's a report that we'll be able to use down the road too. We'll be able to refer back to it. One of the things I noticed, if you look at the survey now, after having that information, that survey is completely out of whack, and really no one's fault, but that's one of the things that we'll be up against when we do service review. Because I think if people at home or the people in the public had access to that report, they would have answered the questions differently, and there's nothing we can do about that. But there may be times when, you know, we're going to be making decisions and people are going to say, well, you know, the public said this and we're going the opposite direction, and that's a perfect example of what we might be going through. Anyway, just a comment.
Thank you. Councillor Kapke.
Thank you, Your Worship. Back to item 5A, which is the rock climbing. I would just ask that the minutes properly reflect the correct name of Grace Harbor Conservation Authority. It's reflected as Grace Harbor Conservation all throughout in the minutes, and any agreement, just to make sure it's a proper name that's on there. Thank you.
Got that? Okay, now I'm going to come back to Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Just to comment on Councillor Gregg's comments about the use of the building. Certainly the discussion at committee, the intention of committee was that the building, they would be paying rent whenever they use the building. That was supposed to be an infrequent, every now and again, certainly not. So I would ask that staff follow up with, if their advertisements are saying use of kitchen, use of washrooms and a warm fireplace, that was not the intent that was brought forward at the meeting. I don't know what others thought, but I thought perhaps in the odd time and inclement weather, they may be in there, and they'd even asked for an hourly rate because they said maybe just an hour once every 2 or 3 weeks. Not, you're right, that advertising certainly sounds different than that. So if they are intending of using that building as I would take that advertisement, then this is a much different discussion. They had talked about being outside almost all the time, with the odd time using the building and paying a rent, the odd time they're going to use it. If there's some disagreement between what we were led to believe and what their advertising says, then we'd better get that clarified. That's all.
Councillor Thomas.
I think it doesn't matter what their advertising says. We've approved what we're willing to do. Their proposal suggests it'll be infrequent, inclement weather use, and that's what we approved as a part of our process. I mean, I think that I think it's a unique and interesting idea. I said this in committee. I think that it's the kind of thing that we pride ourselves here on Owen Sound. We certainly pride ourselves on Harrison Park. We pride ourselves on our fabulous natural environment, and here's a unique and interesting program. And I certainly think on a one-year trial basis, I don't have any issue at all with without letting it go ahead. Further into the report, it states they have all of the proper insurance in place. So that's not going to be an issue for us. And I think that certainly if a business license is a part of doing business in Owen Sound, I trust staff is going to ensure that that is in place.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Now that we're talking about business licenses, there would also be one for the rock climbing as well, if we approve.
When we get there, yeah, that's
but
down the road.
I just was wondering, that would also have a business license as well.
Down the road. Okay, so right now, Councillor McManaman has a motion on to approve the minutes as a whole. Is that what we're doing? That's his motion. We're going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Opposed? One opposed, so it carries. So we're down to number 12, other business. Councillor Thomas was first on the list.
Thanks, Your Worship. As many people will know, a number of us from council were at the AMO conference this week, and I just wanted to give a quick report first on that. For me, one of the more interesting parts was the opening address from AMO itself on their What's Next Ontario report, and a couple of figures that stuck out for me were pretty significant. The report primarily is assessing the $60 billion infrastructure gap in the province of Ontario presently, and given the discussions we've had even earlier tonight in the terms of funding infrastructure, replacing water mains, paving roads, Owen Sound is certainly not alone in that issue, and they've been looking at the financial aspect of things, and a couple of interesting figures. In terms of property taxation in the province of Ontario, over the next 10 years till 2025, in order to maintain services as they are today, property taxes will have to go up 4.51% across the board in the province. That doesn't even begin to address the $60 billion infrastructure deficit. If we want to address that as well, an additional 3.84% per year over the next 10 years will have to be applied to property taxes. So that's 8.3% every year for the next 10 years, just to get to where we should be to maintain our city in the way that it should be maintained. So it was a very, very interesting presentation. They're just rolling out some of the findings they have. Essentially what they're asking the provincial government for is ways other than property tax for municipalities to raise money to cover some of these infrastructure deficits that they've got. The other significant figure that stuck out for me from that program related to police and fire service in the province of Ontario, and the comment was made that from the year 2010 to 2015, in that 5-year period, if police and fire services across the provinces had received the same increase as other municipal employees, Ontario's municipalities would have saved $489 million. And that was a significant figure to me. Again, at this AMO, as last year, the first time I went, interest arbitration in Ontario was a huge topic of discussion, and the need to get emergency service costs under control in the province. So those were just a couple of quick figures on the opening comment. I did attend a couple of sessions, one on public engagement beyond the public meeting, which showcased the efforts that London and Hamilton had made in their strategic plans. As it turns out, all you have to do is get either Chris Hadfield or who was the other? Rex Murphy. It was some... The guy from CBC. Oh, Peter Mansbridge. That's right. You either need Peter Mansbridge or Chris Hadfield to get the public excited in your strategic plan. So I'll be bringing that up when our strategic plan comes for review next time. But interestingly, the process that they followed, you know, one of the key takeaways was the fact that to engage, you have to go where the people are rather than expecting them to come to you. And that is actually something that we took on as council and staff during our strategic plan review. There was a lot of community outreach. So I was quite pleased to see that we're certainly moving in the right direction. The other key takeaway from that session was that public engagement shouldn't be viewed as a project. It should be an ongoing effort aimed at consistent engagement with your community. And I think that's something we can all strive to be better at, that's for sure. The other session I attended was rural economic development, building on inherent strengths. And the basic thrust of the session was what you need to do is look around at your community and sell what you've got, instead of looking outside to bring something in to attract people. And I think, again, that that's something that perhaps in Owen Sound we're not always as good at as we could be. We tend, those of us who have lived here for a while, and I haven't lived here as long as some, but we do take for granted what we have around us. We all enjoy it, but we don't think of it as something that other people might like to enjoy as well. And so I think that certainly some of the stuff I learned at that session will be going forward to the Economic Development and Tourism Committee with me. Two other quick items, Your Worship. I just wanted to remind people that the hospital's annual Bayshore Race fundraiser is coming up this coming Sunday, and it's certainly still not too late to pledge your favorite runner or to get involved in volunteering for the race. It is a big fundraiser, and all of the funds raised there go to purchase hospital equipment. The other one, this is a little self-serving, but I don't think I'm in conflict mentioning it, is the annual Novel Marathon for Literacy being run at the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library over the Labor Day weekend. There'll be about 10 writers there, 3 days to write a complete novel, start to finish, working from a one-page outline. I will be participating, and I'm not taking any further pledges, but there are many writers still involved who will be looking for pledges, and all of the money raised goes to the Adult Learning Center's programs. So thank you, Your Worship.
Is there a website for that, or someplace people can go to?
I think the best place is to go to the library's website. I'm sure there's a link there. Certainly, people can contact me through my city email address if they have an interest, and I can put them in touch with the other writers. Or you can just drop by and see writers at work anytime over the Labor Day weekend at the library.
At the library. Good. Thank you. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did attend several workshops at AMO, but the one I did want to focus on was called Climate Change Going Forward. There were 3 speakers at this workshop. One was CEO of a cement association, and he spoke about the efficiency of using rigid surfaces, which is cement, as opposed to soft surfaces being pavement. He talked about a new cement called Contempra, which reduces carbon by 10% compared to regular cement, and he discussed pavement life cycles compared to concrete. The second speaker was from Rural Ontario Institute and spoke about agri-food opportunities, as well as Green Investment Fund. He provided comparators of rural and urban energy spending and talked about a rural homeowner retrofit program. The third speaker was a Net Zero by Reed Heritage Homes, and they were speaking about net zero energy homes, talking about the key benefits being health, comfort, security, and investment. And they also spoke about incentive opportunity partnerships, such as development charges reductions for zero home builds. So I found those 3 quite interesting.
Thank you. Just while we're on AMO, Councillor O'Leary, Dodd, Deputy Mayor Wright, anything that you want to add from any of the sessions you did while we're on the topic?
Well, I attended on behalf of the county, so I will be reporting to the county, but I did attend a number of interesting sessions. I certainly enjoyed having Ms. Coulter with us. Pam and I seemed to be the early birds. We met the 7:30 meetings and had the horrible food that they served us at those meetings, but we also found out what keeps our CAO up at night. And so I need to talk to Wayne about that one. And it was an excellent, it was certainly an excellent report, that was, and I think we are getting a copy of it because it's, I think all the councillors should have a look at that copy. It was certainly a very interesting session that we went to, and also the interesting sessions with the ministers, which I'm quite sure you're going to mention. But it was a good conference, some interesting speakers, and same old Bear Pit, never changes.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary, Councillor Dodd, anything?
Oh, I was just going to mention, because Your Worship would never say this, there's 2 meetings I sat in on Minister of Labour and Minister of Education. And I just wanted to compliment both Mayor Boddy and MPP Bill Walker on doing an excellent job in those meetings. Makes a big difference when you have real good leadership. Thanks.
Thanks. You're hurting me. Anyone else? Okay, Councillor Lemon, I think you're next.
Yes, Your Worship. There was a recent article in the Sun-Times about concerns that the Citizen Sportsmen have over the viability of the Salmon Derby because the fish are getting smaller because of the zebra mussels and other exotic species. And one of the things that can give us a voice, and I understand from Deputy Mayor Wright, that the county is going to look at joining the mayor's group for the St. Lawrence Seaway Great Lakes. And I think that we as a city should certainly back and encourage the county to join, because our voice needs to be heard. We have a huge amount of shoreline in Grey County. The fishery has been, commercial fishing has been largely destroyed because of contaminants. And I use the words contaminants because the exotic species are. And that started off with the lamprey eel, and we know what that did to the wonderful, wonderful lake trout we used to have in abundance. And now the zebra mussels are eating the zooplankton and very small items in the food chain that work their way up normally to the salmon being the top predator. The problem is that zebra mussels are cutting that off. And now there's a danger of the, I think it's the Asian catfish or something, getting into Chicago. And these are enormous fish, Asian carp, sorry. And what I'd like to say is, I think the County of Grey should be encouraged to join, and I think we as a city should be encouraged to participate. This is the successor to Great Lakes United, because now municipalities are recognizing that piece of blue out north of us is very, very valuable to us. So that's something I would like to pass along and hope that you, Your Worship, and I know Arlene will support getting the county involved in that. And one other comment. Did you know that Owen Sound at one time had a cavalry regiment? Seriously.
You're looking at me, so you're waiting for me to answer?
Yeah.
No.
Neither did I till about 4 weeks ago.
Interesting. I'm not going to start. I'll start asking after off camera. How's that? Because I've got a million questions. Is anyone else? I guess it's me. Amo, I don't really need to repeat much, because I think the press covered us fairly well on the on our 3 meetings or delegations with the Minister of Education, the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Labour, Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Transportation. All of them good meetings. Huge thank you to Ms. Coulter for herding the cats and getting us all there. We tried to split up so that we could go to some of the sessions, because of course they happened at the same time, and took turns going to all of them. But funny, when it came to the Minister of Education, it was pretty clear that everybody wanted to be there, so we went as a group. And yes, it was a great helping having Mr. or MP Bill Walker there. It was a huge help. But, Ms. Coulter got us to dinner on time and got us to lunch on time, and herded the cats, I think would be the best way to describe it. I thought one of the better AMOs with the sessions that they offered, a lot of things that were sort of up our alley or of interest in Owen Sound, so that was good. Summerfolk this past weekend, another huge, great Summerfolk, I thought. How many times in 41 years have we said it was the best one ever? But congratulations to the board and all the volunteers and everybody there. It's kind of fun, having been involved for 6 years, many years ago, seeing things from one side and then going in now as from the city's point of view, and seeing the other side of it. So, you know, there's so much in-kind things that are given that certainly when you're on the board, you appreciate how the community supports you. From the city point of view, staff will meet with the Folk Society for big events like this and follow up with feedback that we get from the community and review it with them and see if there's any things that we can work out together, if there's something that has been overlooked or that we can improve on. Certainly want to thank the neighbors in the neighborhood that perhaps listen to music that they wouldn't normally listen to in their own stereos at all hours of the night, and sometimes it can be loud. So a huge thanks to the neighborhood for putting up with things like Summerfolk and the Fish Derby that's coming up. It's huge for tourism, it's huge for hotels, restaurants, all those things that people come to town, spend money, and that dollar goes from the waitress's pocket to the grocery store, and from the grocery store to, you know, whatever. It circulates through the community when we get money in from out of town, which is pretty important. And that sort of segues into the Fish Derby, which starts this Friday and goes through until the long weekend. Under 16 National Championship fastball was pretty neat. Teams from Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, can't remember if it was New Brunswick, not Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, any from Manitoba? There was, between the umpires and the teams that came and played, every province was covered except, I think, Alberta, which was pretty neat. So it was very much a national event. So it's congratulations to the organizers that put that together, and to the Shell Lake Sting that won it. So fastball has a good future in Owen Sound, as it has for a lot of years. I think that covers everything that I've got. Anyone else? No? Good. So need a motion number 13. Go ahead.
Move by myself that the committee rise and report.
All in favor? That is carried. So we're back into formal session. So resolution adopting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that the action taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
Great. All in favor? That is carried. We have no notices of motion, no new business. Bylaws. Mr. Smith, want to do a run-through?
Yes, Your Worship. There were 7 bylaws on tonight's agenda. 1 bylaw to confirm the business of tonight's meeting. 1 bylaw to amend the traffic bylaw to prohibit westbound left turns on 10th Street East at 5th Avenue East. 4 bylaws to execute agreements already authorized by Council, including a facility use agreement with the Bradford West Gwillimbury Community Events Association for the 2016 Owen Sound Rib Fest, a site plan agreement with Northridge Property Management, Inc. for 727 2nd Avenue East, that's the former Grey Granite Curling Club, an agreement for transit advertising with Pattison Outdoor Advertising, and a lease agreement for airport hangars C3 and C4 at the airport, and finally 1 bylaw to appoint Melanie Brooke as a parking enforcement officer for the city.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Gregg, that bylaw numbers 2016-122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, and 2016-128 be passed and enacted.
All in favor? That is carried. So that completes our business for tonight. I can't remember if I bet a dime or not with our city manager about how late we were going to go tonight with 14 heavy reports. So thanks to council for doing your reading and coming prepared. And I know I won the bet. I just don't know if I won the dime. So thanks for staff for all the hard work of putting those reports together. It's now 9:25. That completes our business, so we're adjourned. Thank you.